From early on, I've always loved to hear stories. Stories from books first, and then as I grew, stories told by people. Even now to this day, I enjoy hearing life stories. As a kid, I grew up listening to stories about my dad's childhood, and it brings back fond memories. I remember the trophy my dad used to have of his go-kart racing days. I'm not sure if he still has it anymore, but remembering the trophy made me think of the stories. My dad is a great storyteller with a wonderful memory. My dad, Lee Axelson, was born in 1946. His older brother and him spent the 1950s growing up and learning about the world. The 1950s featured a different lifestyle boom than other eras. The boom in the economy, the suburbs, and the baby boom. Since coming off of the Depression in the 1930s and the war in the 1940s, the 50s were a time of excelling in these areas and living the so-called happy days. During this time, leisurely sports became an attractant. Go-kart racing began in the mid-50s as a grassroots production and remains a legacy in American automotive history. Lee Axelson and his older brother shared their hobbies of go-kart racing. Lee began go-kart racing in 1958 at the age of 12 in Woodstock, Illinois. He bought a steel frame for about $20 from a farmer and a broken engine for $5. The other miscellaneous parts required were found or borrowed off of other things. These early go-karts were a favorite of many young teenagers and adults as an inexpensive way to race. Lee and his older brother created a mowed track in the backyard for the first year he started racing. Their dad, Gustav, also helped and encouraged the young racers. Lee had this to say about his dad, stating that, "During that time, I spent a lot of time together with my dad, had a lot of bonding time. Not only the racing, but spent a lot of time fixing, tearing down engines, fixing problems, preventative maintenance. Anytime you race, you do a lot of mechanical work." Then, a year later, a clay track opened up about 20 miles from Woodstock in a town called Gilbert. Friday nights were the night the race took place. The summer of 1960 lasted longer, and during an Indian summer on November 20th that year, Lee was in a race against adults. He won a trophy for the fastest qualifying go-kart. He beat out about 25 to 30 other racers, and there were about 150 to 200 people in the stands watching the race. When asked what his favorite thing about racing was, he replied with a smile, "The thrill of the race, very exciting, and the driving." As a kid myself, I had remembered the stories my dad told me about go-kart racing. I find it interesting to revisit the story and learn more about the dates and places in which they took place and where they started from.